Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I am out here today at the range in France by the generous invitation of Scrome. Scrome is actually the only optics manufacturer in France these days, and they're the company that originally made the optics for the FR-F2 sniper rifles. We have basically none of their scopes in the United States. This is, well, I'm out here to have a chance to actually do some shooting with one of them, which should be very interesting. But I want to give you a little background on the company first, because it's an interesting story. Scrome was founded in 1987, and in 1995, the French military decided to upgrade, finally, their APX 806 scopes. This was the original scope for the FR-F2. Before that, it was the scope for the FR-F1. Before that, it was the scope for the 4956. And before that, it was the scope for the MOS-49. This was essentially a German ZF4 style of scope that continued to be used up into the 1990s on the French sniper rifles. And it was only a 3.8 power scope. And it was really a hindrance to the potential of the FR-F1 and FR-F2 rifles. So, 1995, the French Army finally decides to update the scopes. They come up with a list of characteristics of what they want, which is essentially an 8-power fixed magnification telescope. And they wanted to have it manufactured domestically in France. Well, there was really only one company that was doing that sort of work, and that was Scrome. And they really weren't making rifle scopes. Scrome was a company that specialized, and does specialize, in basically optical mechanical devices. So rifle scopes certainly fit that, but what they did most of their work in were things like sighting systems for mortars, for artillery. Today they do work with lasers, with aircraft systems, camera systems, things that are really much more complicated than your typical rifle scope. So in '95, the French government came to them and said, we want this, essentially this list of characteristics, can you build it? And Scrome went, well, sure, okay, we can do that. And they made it, and it was adopted as the J8, 8 for 8 power. They also, the French Army would eventually adopt both the J8 and the J10, which is the exact same scope, 10 power magnification. And what makes this a little bit of an unusual story is Scrome didn't make these scopes for the commercial market. They didn't adapt a commercial scope for military use. They built this thing from the ground up. It's a boutique sort of on-demand manufacture company. They do a lot of relatively small-scale, very complex, very high-precision products. So things like sighting systems for self-propelled howitzers. And so they never really had a stock of these scopes. They were never interested in selling them on the civilian market. Some of the vagaries of French law meant that until fairly recently, because they had a military range-finding reticle, they actually couldn't sell the standard military pattern scope on the civilian market. All of this put together means the scopes have been basically unavailable. The only ones that were out on the market were those that fell off a military truck somewhere. So it's very cool to get a chance to come out and take a look at some of these at Scrome, but they are also actually right now building a run of specifically civilian J8 scopes to sell to the civilian market, because FR-F2 rifles have been sold as surplus and are now available on the civilian market, and they've decided to try and take advantage of that by supplying some scopes for them. Even better, the laws in France have changed, and Scrome's internal policies have changed, and they are actually making these civilian scopes with the original military reticle. So folks who have FR-F2 rifles now are going to have the chance to actually get the exact correct scope to go on them. I think that's a pretty cool opportunity, and I've been sitting here holding this thing and I'm dying to shoot it. So we're on a 400-meter range here. We've got a couple of steel targets at the end, and I want to see if I can ring that steel with a Scrome and an FR-F2. Let's give it a shot, so to speak. Alrighty. 10 rounds, 155 grain, hollow point, boat tail, good, precise long-range ammo. Let's see what we can do at 400 meters with the Scrome and the F2. That was a hit. I like steel targets, and it's extra fun when they're at long enough range that you have a nice little delay between the bang and the clang. All right, clearly that target is too big. That was like 18 inches square. There's a round gong out there that's more like, I think probably 12 to 15 inches as a circle. Let's see if I can get that one. That was just barely a hit. Let's try it again. That was a good solid hit. That was a hit. And as I start to heat the barrel up here, thanks to my thermal shield, Russian snipers with infrared scopes still can't see me. All right, let's take a closer look at what we've actually got here. The original cases are like very 1990s, cool plastic case. Scrome lunette tir, so a shooting scope, J8 MLE model F1. That was the military designation. And we have a couple items here. So the scope itself is it's a robust, fairly heavy scope for its size. And one of the unique things about it is that these were only ever made with Stanag style mounts. So they never used rings. The mount is this bar, and this isn't a uniquely French thing. This is actually a NATO standardized mounting pattern. You'll find the same thing on, for example, H&K claw mounts. And a bunch of other primarily European scope makers made scopes with this style of mount. So you'll find Hensoldts and Schmidt-Benders, or rather you would. These are scopes from, this pattern of mounting is really predominant in the 80s and 90s and really quite difficult to find today. Now for the original FR-F2s, this was joined with this style of mount. The FR-F2 has a quick detach scope mount. That's your locking lever. And then this is set up for your Stanag scope. You got two screws that lock the scope into the base, and you can adjust it forward to back. You've got three positions, 1, 2, and 3, so that you can get the appropriate eye relief. Take a quick look at the markings here. We have Scrome, of course, and then French Army, designation J8 F1, and manufactured date. The dials are in mils, or tenths of a mil. So we've got 0, and then B and H are abbreviations for bas and haut, up and down, and gauche et droite, so left and right. The focus is adjustable. Turn this in and out. And in order to make this usable on rifles that aren't specifically FR-F2s, there is also a Picatinny adapter right here. I can line that up. There you go. So that uses the same two sort of mounting screws. You've got your recoil lug here in the center and two Picatinny clamps. They made a variety of other mounts, including quick detach ones, but this allows the scopes to be used on plain Picatinny rail. And then we've got a rubber sunshade and a rubber eye cup for those who want to use them. Now, these were sold on the civilian market in limited numbers with mil-dot reticles. This one is, as the label says, an original military one, so I can show you the reticle here. And the way I'm going to do that is actually with a still shot because I can get a much better picture of it that way. So let's take a look at the reticle. We have a fairly complicated reticle here. There's a lot of good stuff going on. So let's start with the rangefinder at the bottom. That goes from 200 out to 800 meters in 100 meter increments, and it is based on the height of an average human being. And so you put feet to top of the head and use those progressively shorter and shorter hash marks to figure out which one fits your target the best. That gives you a rough approximate rangefinder. Now, if we go straight up from that, you will see there are both a series of cross hatches, horizontal lines, and then chevrons. So those are your actual aiming points. The first one is 100 meters, and then it's marked 2, 4, 6, and there are intermediaries, so you actually have 100 meter increments for your ranging points. Now, the first 400 in there are actually also quasi-range finders that are essentially the width of a person's shoulders, and so you can also use those as a somewhat, well, as another sort of ad hoc range finder. There are 2 curved lines that run from the 500 up to the 100 position. Those are actually not ballistically relevant. Those are there specifically to draw your eye to the center of the scope. An interesting choice, but that's the case there. Notice, well, when you get below 500, you just have chevrons. There's no point in a width-based rangefinder because it's too small to be usable. Notice that those chevrons start to actually shift just slightly out to the right, and that is to account for spin drift. So there's you don't need to mess with the turrets on the J8 to shoot effectively out to 800 meters because all of your range finding is built into the reticle, all of your holdovers are built into the reticle for the 7.62 NATO loading that these scopes that the rifle was designed for. You don't have to adjust for different loads because it's a military rifle and there is one standard ammunition to set up. The last element here are the hash marks out on the left and right, and those are milliradian adjustments. The large lines are 1 mil and the short lines are 0.2 mils, so you can use that for additional range finding on things that aren't human-sized.
All right, now I'm going to go for a different target. There is a 12 by 18 inch steel plate, still at 400 meters. It's actually 20 by 30 centimeters, but that was a hit. That was a good solid hit. I got 1 round left in the magazine. That was a good solid hit. The problem here is that this rifle and scope combination and ammo just make it too easy. Figured maybe you guys would like to get a chance to see down the range. I don't know that you can actually see any of the hits, but maybe. That was a hit. That was a good hit. Let's go to one of the smaller targets again. All right. Just off to the right. Probably saw the dust cloud on that one. There we go. That's better. I just can't manage to get that middle one. Alright guys, well, I hope you enjoyed the video. I would like to give a big thanks to Scrome for giving me a chance to come out here and actually try out an FR-F2 with one of their proper original scopes, and it is extremely exciting that they're actually going to be making exact replicas, well, just continuing to make military versions of the scope for these rifles for the civilian market. They're expected to be out this fall. They're going to be sold through retailers in France and in the United States. The exact retailers are not yet determined, so if you're interested in one of these, stay tuned. As soon as I find out where they're going to be available, I will let you guys know, but I can tell you they're going to be expensive. Everything that Scrome does is boutique and high-end and low production, and that means expensive. Anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. I've got 3 rounds left, so I'm going to see if I can get 3 more hits with them.